US President Donald Trump signed a number of executive orders aimed at undoing many of the policies implemented by the Biden administration. Soon after his swearing in, Trump signed an order to withdraw the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement for the second time. The US president followed this by signing a formal letter to the United Nations, notifying the global body of the country's intent to leave the landmark 2015 accord, which seeks to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions driving climate change.
And the next item, sir, is a letter that will be transmitted.
Well, Trump also signed an executive order requiring federal workers return to the office full term. The measure was one of several executive orders Trump signed during a public event at an arena in Washington, attended by thousands of his supporters. The measure requires employees to return to work in person at their respective duty stations on a full-time basis, provided that the department and agency heads shall make exemptions they deem necessary. Trump also revoked a 2023 executive order signed by Joe Biden that sought to reduce the risks that artificial intelligence poses to consumers, workers, and national security. A number of other orders were also signed in front of the supporters inside the arena in Washington, D.C. Well, the other orders include the rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, a freeze on all federal hiring, excepting the military, and a number of other excluded categories until full control of the government is achieved. A regulatory freeze preventing bureaucrats from issuing any more regulations. Also, a directive to every department and agency in the federal government to address the cost of living. Also, a directive to the federal government ordering the restoration of freedom of speech and preventing government censorship of free speech. A directive to the federal government ending the weaponization of government against the political adversaries of the previous administration. Well, Donald Trump signs a slew of executive orders, including regulatory freeze preventing bureaucrats from issuing negotiations, orders signed on government weaponization against political adversaries. And for more on all this, we have Anil Thomas joining us. Well, Anil, Donald Trump signs first round of executive orders, including the rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, which effectively reverses many of the policies put in place by the previous administration. Give us an overall of the orders and their implication.
Well, good morning, Lipakshi. Well, very much on the expected lines. There were expectations that he's going to do something on a similar line, and I think he's stuck to the guns, especially when it comes to walking the talk on all the heavy lifting that he's done in his election campaign and after his win. Remember, he's got a wafer-thin majority in both houses, but having said that, these particular executive orders that he's brought, it's a vindication of the man and the movement that he's continued for long. And I think this particular move that is done in the first day of presidency, the first orders that he signed, clearly indicates that more is to come. The next 4 years could be tumultuous, could be challenging, but it also could, the idea that he has behind all this is to make America proud, or America first once again. And I think the idea that the people have brought when it comes to bringing him to power is something that, he's now trying to fulfill. And I think it's a tough walk ahead, but I think at least the early steps that he's taken, he's clearly indicated that he has the mandate and he plans to do things, which are never imagined or which are never thought about, especially in America.
Right. Anil, also only minutes after he took office, Trump also ended the Biden-era border app CBP-1 that basically helped the migrants gain legal entry at the US-Mexico border to tighten the border controls. This all despite a sharp decline in the migration over the last 6 months.
Well, that's been one of his dream projects. Remember, we have seen Trump 1.0 version where he stuck to that Mexico border and he considered it to be pretty important. especially when it comes to people entering through that borders or entering through those borders. And he wanted that wall to be created, which ran into some kind of rough weather. But I think this time around, he's very clear. Border issues, immigration, birthrights in America for people immigrating from abroad are things that he's very clear, along with tariffs that he's announced. His footprint is, he's going to push all the challenges or all the people who trade with China, who trade with the United States of America to the wall. I think China, Canada, even Mexico would feel the heat. China in particular, where he's talking about almost 60% of tariffs. And I think TikTok is just the beginning of, how he's arm twisted or he's managed to get them on in the same line that he wants. In case they want to operate in America, they need to follow the line. I think that's where the push is going. It's a push as of now. Will it turn into a shove is something that we need to watch. But clearly the early steps that Trump has taken, Trump means business here. Trump knows that he's the leader of the world's largest democracy, and he has the power, especially when it comes to doing things his way. And I think he's going to push it the limit, especially this time around, because whatever unfulfilled business that he had in his first tenure, he's going to see to it that they are fulfilled in this particular Trump 2.0.
Right, and also much on the expected lines, Trump signed the promised executive action to delay TikTok ban for 75 days, the law which gives the president broad discretion on how to enforce the ban.
Well, it was almost expected. First, what was, indicative was that maybe one of the tech giants in America would end up, or, the Chinese would have to let go of the ownership of TikTok, or the company that owns TikTok has to give up the ownership. It has to be passed on to the hands of an American tech developer or dealer. That was the first talk. But now, I think there seems to be a thin line being taken. 50% of it, I think, China understands the pressures. There are alternative apps that have come that are almost on par with TikTok. But I think the immense potential and the immense following that TikTok has, Trump understands that. Trump doesn't want to let go of the opportunity. It's a great way to leverage things in his direction, and I think he's using it to the fullest. TikTok is just the beginning. There are many other issues, especially on the tariff front. 60% is what he's talking about. China could also come out with similar tariffs that could be imposed. It's tariffs upon tariffs. It's going to be a huge drawn battle that we're going to see. What's the middle part Trump takes, or Trump is going to stick to the ideas that he spoke, the ideas that he propagated to the people when he asked for votes. If he's going to stick to that, I think it's going to be a tough walk, as I mentioned. But I think the middle path, especially when it comes to TikTok, has been taken. So we would see similar kind of, I would say speed breakers that Trump would hit, and he would always fight an alternative route, considering that he's got the tech industry behind him. Remember his presidency and the oath-taking ceremony. You should see the who's who of the tech world was there in attendance, and I think Trump believes that they could be, one of those invisible supporters that Trump has, especially when it comes to handling these issues and handling or keeping China in check.
All right, Anil, thank you so much for all those details.